Well, if you have arachnophobia, then you're gonna have a hard time with this one, guys, because we're talking about movies that involve spiders. It's one of the more common fears out there, so of course there's a number of horror flicks that take advantage of that, and I figured that it would be a great time to check out 10 of them, although there's enough of them out there to do multiple volumes, so expect to follow up in the future, because my notes for this video had like 30 movies on it, and I just chose 10 out of them. So yeah, if you're scared of spiders, this may get rough. Number 10. We're going to start this list off back in 1975 with the giant spider invasion. It starts with a comet coming from the sky, and this guy...
Hi, little buddy.
Hey, that's clearly not Gilligan. Something's fishy. We meet some other of the town locals.
You know, it's too bad that there's this little age difference between us. If you were 5 years older, I'd jump you.
I guess when I say town locals, it looks like this is Cougar Town. That big old space rock comes crashing down, so I hope no one pokes it with a stick, but I don't know why this is so weird to me. But at one point, the sheriff literally talks directly to the camera.
That's funny. I wonder why she hung up on me.
So, like, does the skipper know he's a film character? Is this a fourth wall break? Can I just say that Deadpool is a ripoff of this? There's a plane crash near the comet site, and classic TV actor Steve Brody shows up here as Dr. Vance, investigating the B-52 crash. Vance teams up with Barbara Hale, and she was most known for her long run as Della Street on just about every Perry Mason movie, and was no relation to Alan Hale. They start finding mutilated cattle around, and there's spider webs all over the place. And sure enough, this guy finds some space rock and makes that really smart move of breaking it open, and a big spider comes out of it. But they're too distracted by the fact that it appears to be Diamond. And oh, Skipper is basically the comic relief, and he yucks it up with pun after pun.
A Geiger counter? Well, we don't have any Geigers around here. Never did have in these parts.
Soon, though, dead bodies are showing up with skeletons picked super clean, like those spiders just ate the skin, the muzzle, all the blood, everything. But I also love that the spider got loose in their house, and this thing's pretty damn big, but these two walk by it around 7 times without noticing it there. More fellas appear, and so far all of them are regular sized, and need I remind them that this movie is called the Giant Spider Invasion, unless I'm confused and the invasion is what's giant. But before this movie is over, I'm hoping for giant spider. There finally are some bigger dudes, like these Spirit Halloween leftovers, but they're nowhere near as creepy as this guy.
Maybe I should have married you instead of her.
I was 11 years old.
Well, you're not any 11 now.
And let me tell you, when the giant spider finally does show up, it's not too far into the film. And this thing is pretty great. And I have to tell you, when I saw that this movie was by Bill Rebane, legendary schlock movie director known for slow movie turds like Monster A Go-Go and Rana, Legend of Shadow Lake, I did not have high hopes. Usually his movies are just people in rooms talking about a monster showing up, and when they do show it, it's usually underwhelming. But this spider is great, and they show it a lot. And what's magical is that this thing is just a Volkswagen Beetle with those giant legs attached. It had a fairly low budget of $300K and doing pretty well, and made around 15 million bucks. It got some modern cred by being an on-episode of MST3K, and is pretty loved as being a silly, cheesy film with some hilarious moments and plenty of one-liners for the old skipper.
Does that gospel wanga go on?
I don't know, but I'll tell you, he may work for God, but he sure hollers like the devil.
Number 9. This next one is one that I was thinking about putting on that nursery rhyme horror list a little while back. But I thought it would be better here, and it's 2019's Itsy Bitsy. We see a remote tribe and a ritual involving a type of spider, and a man that was bitten by that spider that is then shot. We then meet Kara, a single mother of 2 kids, and she's taken a job as a private care nurse for a sick man out in the countryside. That man is none other than the evil Senator Kelly, and he's discovered a special treat with a relic from that tribe we saw earlier. He collects rare antiquities, and the family settles into the manor, and trouble starts right away when something comes out of that relic, and it's a big spider. It seems the tribe worships some sort of goddess that takes the form of something spiderish, and Kara is haunted by the memory of the car crash that killed another of her children and has a pill addiction because of it. Meanwhile, the Arachno one is sustaining itself on local cats. Rachel Creed shows up as the town sheriff, and I know Star Trek fans may be like, that's not Rachel Creed, that's Tasha Yar. But this is a horror list, guys, so I'm going with Creed. And I should point out that we get to the 45-minute point of the film, and for the most time, the spider is just like lurking around, and I should stress that this thing is cat-sized. So how on earth is this sucker just hiding in the house? Because I'm telling you that I can sense when there's a normal-sized spider in a room with me, let alone one this big. They do go into the backstory of the spider goddess, and is said to live in the darkness between the stars, and that people used to worship her. And, oh, I guess it lives in this dollhouse in the attic where it's laying eggs, making webs. And yeah, the entire movie hinges upon the fact that the spider just isn't bothering to attack anyone, or else it would be like around 10 minutes long. So I'm not sure what its plan is, and if it's just biding its time, or if it's just really interested in the family drama that's going on here. It's kicking back with a bucket of popcorn. Finally, though, at the 1 hour mark, the bugger finally decides to actually do something, but even then it takes its time. And yeah, this movie's fine, but it's a bit on the dull side, and honestly, if you're arachnophobic, then maybe this one is for you, since the spider's actually like such a limited part of what goes on for a large chunk of the runtime. Meanwhile, it was the feature directorial debut for Micah Gallo, and most of his background appears to be in visual effects, and the work on the spider is quite nice here, although perhaps just not enough of it. Number 8. We are going back in time once again to 2001's Arachnid. And in case you weren't sure that this was 2001, well, take a look at these digital effects. There's a fighter pilot, and I swear from the eyes that I thought that this was Bruce Campbell, but I guess not. And the guy crashes and finds the wreckage of an alien craft. This ET is suddenly attacked by a giant spider that jumps into the trees and then kills him. There's then a girl that I damn sure don't want to follow down into any caves, and she's hired to fly down a medical expedition to investigate a mysterious virus. And of course, on the way down, their plane also crashes. And geez, movie, how hard is it to keep a plane in the sky here? Like, what is this movie? Sponsored by Boeing? They decide to check out the jungle area, but strange stuff starts occurring right away as one of their guys has some ticks burrow into him. And of course, some wacky developments that require our leads to take their shirts off. But when they come across a small village, they find some weird insect life, and whoops! That guy starts vomiting up ticks, which I have to say, that sort of beats arachnophobia for me. I'm afraid of spiders. What are you afraid of? Puking ticks and having them pop out of my eyeballs. Yeah, you win. And when this guy shoots him, everyone looks at him with this really heavy look like, what did you do? And my mans, if ticks are popping out of my face, please just freaking shoot me. We also learned that the guy from the intro was Lauren's brother, which is a hell of a coincidence. And I should mention at this point that we're almost an hour in and our big bug has barely been in this, which is starting to be a theme here. Why is it that the cheapest and silliest movie on this list has been the least shy about giving us our lead? This does give us some other weird multi-leg creepy crawlers to fill in the gaps though, and it does finally show up and is pretty gloriously practical. Even though there is some glitchy CG going on here, it's not used for a bunch of the spider shots, and I kind of love it. And there was a bit of pedigree here since it was produced by Brian Yuzna's company, and this was in a time frame that he was producing a number of films with the cooperation of Spain, and shot there and used a Spanish crew and partial cast. The director was actually Jack Shoulder, the man behind The Hidden and Nightmare on Elm Street 2, and this was one of his final productions. And when I say it like that, it sounds like he died, but he's still alive. He just stopped directing. And he's on record as saying that this is his least favorite film that he made. And it's really not all that bad, like at all. It's a bit on the bland side. And I'm gonna say that there's not enough spider, but there's not enough spider. And as far as straight to video monster movies from the 2000s, it's worth a watch. Number 7. We're going even further back now to 1958 with The Spider, which is also known as Earth versus the Spider. This one begins with a man driving down the road and then attacked by something unseen. His daughter Carol is upset that he doesn't come home, so they go looking for him and find his truck next to a big foreboding cave. They then make a great and very smart decision to go look for her dad in the cave. And that cave, once again, is good old Bronson Caves, and it's also the location of the Batcave from the old TV show, and it's where Invasion of the Body Snatchers was filmed, the alternate end to Army of Darkness, and like 100 other things. They don't find their dad, but what they do find is a bunch of big old sticky ropes, or, a web. Sure enough, it was spun by this big old buddy right here, and it chases them, making some sort of screeching sound? I'm not sure spiders sound like this, but you know what? I'm not looking to check that. They bring the police back, and can we talk a second about how essential that the theremin was to classic sci-fi? Like if you don't know what a theremin is, it's the thing that makes this sound. It's a weird instrument that was adopted by a bunch of classic horror and sci-fi flicks, and it looks pretty sci-fi itself. They find Dad's body all withered up and drained of his fluids, and legend has it that this was the art model for Aunt May in the old comics, and then face off against the big 8-legged one. They kill it, and wow, this movie is pretty short, as there's only like a half hour in, so there's two options. That thing ain't dead, or there's more in there. And this is by the classic low-budget filmmaker Burt I. Gordon, who also made The Amazing Colossal Man and Food of the Gods. And what's funny is that this was originally meant to be called Earth versus the Spider, and the title screen still says that, although it's mostly referred to as just The Spider. And that's because this was close to the release of The Fly, and they wanted to cash in on that. This one did really well at the time and took on a reputation as a classic monster movie, and eventually got the riffing treatment on an episode of MST3K. Also, in the early 2000s, it was remade in a way when Showtime did a series of remakes that built upon the title only. So even though the film was called Earth vs. the Spider, the plots shared no similarities. Number 6. Let's stay in that same general time frame and check out 1955's Tarantula. This starts in a pretty odd way for a movie called Tarantula, since we have this misshapen man in pajamas in the middle of the desert and who collapses and like what? And then a sheriff's office, and hey, this guy, Hank Patterson, he was also just in Earth vs. the Spider as well, so I guess he's clearly not arachnophobic. A doctor, played by John Agar, is called in to check out that body, and they determine it to be a local scientist, although mutated beyond recognition. One of his colleagues has a bunch of oversized animals in this place that he's doing experiments on with enhanced nutrients like guinea pigs and rats and such, and of course, a tarantula. And yeah, how many times do I have to say, if you're working on a formula to make things large, hey, perhaps not the big nasty spiders. Make a kitten big, or a moth. Giant moths are helpful, or so I'm told. But I guess he has another human test subject who attacks him, and that furball gets loosed and heads for the hills. The Doc's new assistant, Stephanie, who goes by Steve, heads to the lab with Doc Hastings, where nosy newsman Joe is trying to find info on the Doc as well. And yeah, we get to around the half-hour point of this movie called Tarantula, and very little of the plot has revolved around that critter, with everything is just intrigued with the Doc's formula and what he's hiding. It's been in 3 scenes so far, and then finally, at around the 40-minute mark, the big fella appears, but they don't even see it. They think the rocks fell on their own, and Tarantula's all like, "Notice me! Make this movie about me!" He does something as it gets close to the hour mark, though, and finally goes on the attack. And this one's from Jack Arnold, responsible for some heavy hitters like The Incredible Shrinking Man and The Creature from the Black Lagoon. And even though there's probably not enough spider stuff going on, the other storyline is still pretty damn entertaining. And all of the giant animal stuff was pretty high-tech special effects for the time period.
What about the tarantula?
Yes, movie. What about him? But yeah, it was successful and certainly had an impact at the time, even getting a mention in Rocky Horror Picture Show. Number 5. Well, hey, that movie was about one tarantula, but what if there were more? Let's find out with Tarantulas, The Deadly Cargo from 1977. We get some buggy buddies immediately, and they're just crawling around these laborers, and they don't even notice, don't care. And to be fair, in reality, tarantulas aren't as dangerous as all this would make you think. And hey, look at that, it's Detective Ray Cameron and Venus Flytrap. And they're trying to take a run of coffee out on their plane. And after dealing with the local officials, they're able to fly away with a bunch of the spiders on board with them. But they're also smuggling across 3 people who went across the border, and one is deathly ill. But then there's a crazy storm that roused them up, and the Tarants start a-biting, and they're venomous. But then there's some plane troubles as they hover over a small town in California, and then things get worse when the spiders make their way up into the cockpit and chomp, killing the 2 main reasons why I wanted to watch this movie, damn it. Instead, Sheriff Lobo is here, and so is Grandpa, so I wonder if he's going to go for the brain shot. They find the now wrecked plane, and their investigation lets the killer buddies free, and they start to patrol around town, lurking and attacking feet like its name is Quentin Tarantulatino, am I right? And you know, I went for a long hike a while back, and the trail was pretty remote and deep in the woods, and on the trail, we came across a couple of tarantulas and almost stomped right on them. And when we told some other hikers, they were like, yeah, and I guess that's how not deadly they are. And this one was actually a TV movie made for CBS, but it also got a theatrical release in Mexico. It was pretty popular on airing and was even nominated for a couple of Emmys for the sound work, although it didn't win either. But then, here's the kicker. This movie is called Tarantulas, The Deadly Cargo, but spoiler alert, they aren't even tarantulas. They're revealed to be banana spiders, like a whole different type. So hey movie, I feel ripped off. Throw in the fact that you're giving me Tom freaking Atkins and Howard Hessman, and then you're killing them off all willy-nilly. And what are you doing, tarantulas that aren't even tarantulas, The Deadly Cargo? Number 4. We're going to jump back to 1977 for a second here, the same year as The Deadly Cargo, and check out one of the more known entries with Kingdom of the Spiders. We're out in Arizona and kick off with this very confused cow, although I'm not sure that there's any other kind, like cows just always seem confused. Something attacks it and kills it, and god damn it, Jim, he's a doctor, not a captain. And now I'm compelled to do the rest of this entry in my worst Shatner impression. But we meet our usual assortment of wacky town characters, including Diana, an arachnologist, a person who studies spiders. She immediately butts heads with the oh-so-manly Doc Hansen, and she's there to figure out just exactly what killed that cow. But, uh-oh, there's more spiders on the prowl. And in fact, they all live in what they refer to as the Spider Hill. The specimens there are out of their regular habitats, and as expected, Diane soon softens to the roguish charms of Rack, because, yes, for some reason, Shatner's character's nickname is Rack. They burn the Spider Hill, but of course, a bunch escape and attack this guy's face, which is one of the more hilarious moments here, mainly for his "oh no" yell. They find out that the venom that these spiders have is 5 times more toxic than your ordinary spider, which is kind of necessary because, again, the bites of most tarantulas wouldn't bug you unless you were allergic. They also surmise that the spiders are migrating due to their food sources being depleted through the uses of DDT and such, but the local authorities ignore that because some things never change. And this film is full of people with comical yells. And I have to say, I actually wonder if those are real yells from having actual spiders on them, because they did use real spiders here. It's said that they employed around 5,000 of them, and Shatner says that so many spiders were killed during filming that he was haunted by the sounds of them squishing. And the director was John Bartkardos, and he's done some genre stuff, including The Day Time Ended and Mutant. It did pretty well at the box office as well, bringing in around 17 million. Rumors of a sequel circulated for years, with the Shat himself trying to get one off the ground that he himself would direct, but it just never happened. It did go on to notoriety for being known as the Spider Attack movie, and when a certain other film was released in 1990, it was dubbed a knockoff. Its most notable bit has become the ending shot, which certainly owes a nod of gratitude to the birds, even if it's a painfully obvious hidden. Number 3. It was hard for me to put this next one in third here, but we're looking at 2013's Big Ass Spider, which opens with possibly the best opening sequence in a low-budget film that I've ever seen. It's this great slow motion bit set to a cover of Where Is My Mind as one of the heroes walks down a burning street amidst chaos and gunfire, finally revealing a Los Angeles high-rise mounted by, you guessed it, a big-ass spider. It's really well done and a solid opener, as it then bounces to 12 hours earlier and we meet Alex, an exterminator helping out Magda, and a brown recluse bite sends him to the hospital. While there, a rather large arachnid crawls out of a body bag and bites a guy, and since Alex is all about bugs, he teams up with a security guard named Jose to investigate. It turns out that the military is involved, and Leland Palmer is looking for something, and that something is loose and attacking people in the hospital. It looks like it's getting bigger by the minute, and they say that in just hours, it has quadrupled in size, and it comes equipped with an acid spray. It gets loose into the city, and the military continue to try to track it down, but so are Alex and Jose. So, it's looking like the big-ass spider doesn't even stand a chance. And this is by Mike Mendez, and he hasn't really done enough, but made a fun flick called The Grave Dancers, and later did the entertaining Dolph Lundgren flick Don't Kill It, and has a segment in the anthology film Satanic Hispanics. And it's pretty damn fun, even if it never really lives up to the promise of that opening sequence, and the plot is a sort of standard spider attack flick. The thing that sets it apart is the outstanding rapport between Greg Grunberg and Lombardo Boyar, and their characters make everything far more enjoyable. I can't find anything in the way of budget information, but it can't possibly be higher than your standard sci-fi original flick, and the FX are on par with that, but I don't know. I just love this script and the characters, and even if the movie itself doesn't reinvent the wheel by any stretch of the imagination, it's probably the best time I had out of anything on this list. Number 2. Our last two movies here are perhaps the most well-known, and this one is from 2002, and it's Eight-Legged Freaks. We're out in Arizona, and a random barrel of bad stuff goes into a local water supply. Francis Dollarhide is on hand, and he has a bunch of exotic spiders.
Yeah, look how they kill. I call this an arach attack.
And that was meant to be a title drop, but we'll talk about that later. They all get loose, and Dewey's here, returning to his old hometown. And Little Mike's mom is sing-along with Kari. Speaking of spiders, her daughter is a black widow, and it looks like the buggers just keep getting bigger and bigger. Meanwhile, the town has fallen on rough times, and their only hopes lie in Chris's family's minds. And pretty soon, things are ramping up as jumping spiders attack motorbike riders, cutting off the town's communication. And they all start attacking everyone, causing total chaos. We see attacks from the trapdoor spiders, which leads to this really, really weird music cue. And eventually the whole community heads for a big face-off with the Spidery clan at the mall. And Look out for that.
Arachnids.
And yeah, that was how the film was shot. It even used that title in some countries, but this film came out in mid-2002, not terribly long after 9/11. And it was pointed out that Iraq Attack sounded a little too close to Iraq Attack, and they opted to go with another title. Turns out that there was a quick line of dialogue from David Arquette that he threw into the movie as an ad-lib.
Get back, you eight-legged freak!
And they liked that so much that they ran with it and used it as a new title. It was co-written and directed by Ellery El-Kayem and was an elaboration of a 13-minute short that he had made called Larger Than Life. If you're not familiar with the name, well, after this movie, he went on to make the universally maligned Return of the Living Dead 4 and 5. And the only thing he did after that was in 2009 with a straight-to-video comedy sequel called Without a Paddle, Nature's Calling. And what's weird is that this was a somewhat pricey movie at $30 million, and it did all right, earning $45 million. But that's not really a financial success in Hollywood terms. Even though in 2003 they were working on a sequel with El-Kayem coming back to direct, and it said that Arquette would return to play Chris again, but then it was never spoken of. And I like this quite a bit. I mean, the plot's all over the place, and some characters just up and disappear and don't matter to the story anymore. But it feels like a nice throwback to 50s creature features, and it's a great watch. Number 1. Our final film today is the one that I think that most people think of when you talk about killer spider films, and that's 1990's Arachnophobia. Not only is it the highest profile entry here, but it taught people a new vocabulary word. It has the late great Warlock down in Venezuela and looking for a newly discovered species of spider. There's a photographer named Jerry with him, and when they find some of the buggies, they discover that they have no sex organs and are like worker bees. Jerry gets bitten by a big one and immediately seizes up and dies. They send his body back to his hometown in California, and that spider has smuggled its way into his coffin and goes for a ride. It ends up near a farm where the Purple Rose of Cairo and his family are moving because, once again, moving is the greatest terror. Ross is deathly afraid of spiders, and that big lady finds her way into a barn and encounters a random other spider, and I am not making this up. There's a sort of a love scene between them. Thankfully, they cut away, and we don't quite have to watch spiders boning. Do spiders bone? Do they bone? Do they have bones? Dr. Jennings gets bad news when it turns out that the doctor he was meant to replace opts not to retire after all, and the town doesn't give him a warm welcome, including the king of not necessarily the news, Stuart Pankin. If you're a John Carpenter fan, well, you're getting Peter Jason action, and even Frances Bay, otherwise known as the creepy old lady from The Mouth of Madness, and little baby spiders are born and are soon crawling all over. And one bites the kindly Ms. Hollins, killing her instantly, and Ross is blamed. An exterminator is called in, and it's a stranger in the Alps, and pretty soon the little fellows are spreading out all over, with just a single nip enough to lay you out. Doc Atherton gets called in, and Ross is forced to confront his arachnophobia because before long, those suckers are swarming everywhere. And this one was directed by Frank Marshall and produced by Steven Spielberg for Amblin Entertainment. And it was Marshall's first time in the chair for a feature, but he had already had a producing relationship with Spielberg. It had a budget of $22 million, which was pretty modest even in 1990 for this kind of movie, and actually used a number of live-action spiders for filming and extensive use of some practical puppets, since this was before the cusp of digital effects. It was a much hyped and discussed film at the time, and was the first film to be distributed by Hollywood Pictures. It did quite well, earning $53 million, which doesn't make it a monster hit, but did make it a nice earner. And recently, there's been talks of a remake with Happy Death Day's Christopher Landon taking the chair. And it's a ton of fun, even if it does lag in the middle portion, but it's got some fun character stuff and enough spider action to appease any bug lover. So there you have it, 10 movies about 8-legged creatures, spiders. Yeah, people are very afraid of them. I'm not that afraid of spiders. I find them to be creepy, and yeah, they're spiders. But for the most part, they don't bug me, and I don't mind watching horror movies about them. I enjoy them. And this list was a lot of fun. I pretty much enjoyed almost all of these. They were good movies to check out. There's so many more Spider movies out there. So many more. My list is already pretty huge. But if there's any that you want to see on the next list, tell me down below. Let me know which of those ones you want to see first, because I probably will be doing a follow-up to this in the future, second part. Let me know which of those you want to see. If you enjoyed this video, hit that like button. If you enjoy what you see on the channel, hit the subscribe button. And if you think about it, go to my Patreon page at patreon.com/movietimelines, where you can help support this channel. These guys do that, and they're awesome for doing it. So you can too. And otherwise, just keep on coming back and watching these videos, because there'll be another one coming very shortly. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.